So I stumbled upon something fishy while I was a junior analyst. When I showed my boss what I'd found, he got super antsy. He said something like, "Those clients are just too important," and basically told me to drop it. The next day I got canned because of restructuring. I didn't argue, I just packed up my stuff and left. But before I went, I made one last stop. My name's Matthew Shaw, and I was 28. I'd been a junior financial analyst at Westbrook Investment Partners in Denver for almost 2 years at that point. I mostly just worked, poring over spreadsheets trying to find anything out of place, anything that others might miss. I wasn't great at the whole office social thing, I didn't really do the happy hour thing. But I knew numbers. Numbers never lie, and if you know where to look, patterns can't hide. That's why the Harley Group accounts started bothering me. At first, there were tiny things, invoices that didn't quite line up with our records, you know. Then it was the payment routing numbers that kept going to the same three places. Vendor names that seemed legit but had no websites or addresses. I could confirm everything. Curtis Brandt was my direct manager. He had the fancy corner office and those pricey golf clubs. I went to his office that Tuesday afternoon with the folder in hand. He just motioned me in without looking up from his computer. "What's going on, Shaw?" I set the folder down on his desk. "I found something weird with the Harley accounts." He glanced at the folder, then back at me. "Weird how?" I pointed to the parts I'd highlighted. "This whole thing was shady, you know. Shell companies, same old routes, crazy high numbers, it was all a setup." Curtis was going through the files, his face getting tighter and tighter with every page. He finally slammed the folder shut, holding onto it for a second longer than he should have. These clients were huge for them. "Let it go," he said, and I just nodded like, "Yeah, I get it." But secretly, I'd already made copies of everything. Something in his voice, I just had this feeling I'd need them later. The next day, Heather from HR called me in. They were doing a restructuring thing and my job was gone. "Nothing personal," she said, like it meant something. They'd send a severance check. I had to clear out my desk by noon. No one even looked at me while I packed up. It's weird how fast you disappear from people's minds. I'd moved to Denver 3 years before, right after getting my Master's in financial analysis. Grandma left me enough dough to pay off my student loans, but that was about it. She always said, "Trust your gut, Matthew. Numbers might be honest, but people, definitely not." She raised me after my parents died in a car crash when I was 12. Westbrook Investment Partners wasn't my dream gig, but it was a good firm, respectable. I kept my head down, worked 60-hour weeks, and built a reputation for being dependable, even if I wasn't exactly setting the world on fire. Curtis hired me himself. He said he liked how detail-oriented I was. "People miss things," he told me in the interview. "I need someone who doesn't." Looking back, it's like the alarms were blaring, you know. The Harley Group's accounts were off limits. Only a select few could touch them. When you asked about their investments, you got brushed off or the answers were super vague. I even heard Curtis on the phone once saying, "Nah, nobody's asking questions. It's all going down exactly how we talked about it." But I just ignored it all. I was trying to build something here, respect, a real career, a good life. I didn't want to rock the boat. There was this compliance analyst, Jennifer Riley, 2 floors below me. We'd run into each other in the break room a few times. She was known for being like super thorough, almost scary. One time she came by to check a mistake I'd caught in another account. "Good eye," she said, looking over my cubicle with all my neat piles of stuff. "Not everyone pays that much attention." I just said, "Just doing my job." She looked at me for a sec. "Keep doing it that way." And then she gave me her card. If you ever see something fishy, my door's always open. I kept her card in my wallet, right behind my driver's license. Never thought I'd actually need it. There was another sign I missed too. A couple of months before, another analyst, Trevor, got canned. Rumor around the office was he'd been asking too many questions about certain accounts. At the time, I just figured he'd screwed up, made a huge mistake. Now I wondered if he'd seen what I was seeing. The day before I finally saw what was really going on, Curtis had asked me to lunch. It was weird. He'd never acted like that before. He started asking about my future plans, if I was happy at Westbrook, even said I was promising. Looking back, I figure he was sizing me up, checking if I'd keep my mouth shut. And I totally blew it, without even realizing there was a test. The day after they canned me, I sat in my apartment, just staring at my laptop. Before I left, I'd sent copies of those Harley Group files to my personal email. Probably not the best idea, legally speaking, but something in my gut said this was bigger than me. I made a spreadsheet, listing every transaction I'd marked as suspicious. Over half a year, over 4 million bucks had flowed through those shell companies. I hadn't seen the whole picture at work, but now, looking at it all, it was crystal clear. Someone was using our firm to launder money, and Curtis knew all about it. My phone dinged. A text from Alicia, another analyst at Westbrook. She'd heard what happened. It was insane. They let you go without a word. Drinks tonight, it said. I didn't reply. I couldn't even explain to myself what I was thinking. And I didn't know who I could trust anymore. I dug out my wallet and found Jennifer Riley's card. Her number was right there under her email. I held my phone, staring at it. What was the point? I was already fired. Taking on a company that size would be a huge fight, expensive and draining, maybe even ruin my career. They'd paint me as some troublemaker. Maybe I should just walk away, find a new job, pretend I never saw anything. My apartment felt cramped, suffocating. I needed some air, so I grabbed my keys and went for a drive. I ended up at this park, the one Grandma used to take me to when I visited. I sat on a bench, just watching people go by, runners, dogs chasing those flying discs. I could almost hear her saying, "Trust your gut, Matthew." So, what was my gut telling me? That something seriously fishy was going down. That rich folks were bending the rules and hurting people because of it. That Curtis had picked a side, and it was the wrong one. And that I had a huge decision to make. When I got back, I printed everything out. 317 pages. It was a mountain of paperwork. I organized it all chronologically, of course, put tabs on each shady client, and wrote little summaries of what I'd uncovered. Then I stuffed the whole mess into a big manila envelope. Surprisingly, I wasn't angry anymore, just calm, like a weight had lifted. I sent a quick email to Jennifer Riley. Really short and sweet. "I found something you need to see. Can we meet tomorrow?" She wrote back 20 minutes later. Her office, 9 a.m. That night, I slept better than I had in ages. Jennifer's office was smaller than I pictured. No window, just walls covered in filing cabinets and those thick rule books. She pointed to the chair opposite her desk as I shut the door. "I'm not working here anymore," I said, putting the envelope down. "But I thought someone should know about this." She didn't even open it right away. "Tell me what I'm looking at," she said. And so I started explaining everything I'd found. "Okay, so picture this. Shell companies, fake routes for money, invoices that were totally bogus, the whole 9 yards. Curtis told me to drop it, and bam, I was fired the next day. They said it was a restructuring thing, but yeah, right. Jennifer didn't even flinch while I laid it all out. After I finished, she opened the envelope with the papers I'd brought, and she looked them over. Then she just said, real matter of fact, 'You kept copies of the company's financial stuff.' Not a question, you know." I said, "Yeah, I did." She said it went against company rules and could even be illegal, which I already knew. She looked at me for a long time and then asked, "What do you want, Matthew?" Honestly, nothing, really. I just couldn't live with myself knowing what was going on. Jennifer sighed, closed the folder, and said she'd look into it, but couldn't promise anything. She shoved the papers in her desk and warned me that this could really bite me in the butt. I got up to leave and said I understood. And she made sure I understood what I was understanding. Westbrook is loaded. They have some serious legal firepower. If I was right, people could lose their jobs, even go to jail. And they would definitely fight back dirty. Like they already fired me, what else could they do? I had my answer, I guess. 3 days later, a certified letter from Westbrook's lawyers, accusing me of stealing company secrets, breaking confidentiality, and get this, saying bad things about them. They wanted all my papers back, and for me to take back everything I said about their shady dealings. The letter, it basically threatened me. They were saying if I didn't play ball, they would come after me with everything they had. Then, that afternoon, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Matthew, it's Curtis," the voice said. "We need to talk." My heart hammered, but I managed to sound calm. "I don't think that's a good idea," I told him. He went on, "Look, things got a little crazy. I know you're ticked off about losing your job, but this isn't the way to handle it. If you drop it, we can work something out, maybe even get you back on the team." "What team?" I asked him. "The one that pretends not to see clients laundering money." There was a pause. Then he said, "You have no clue what you're talking about or who you're messing with. These guys," he hesitated. "Just meet me for coffee, 15 minutes. "No thanks," I said. "You're making a huge mistake, Shaw," he warned me. After I hung up, I called a lawyer. The consultation cost almost a whole day's pay from my old job, but I had to know where I stood. Elaine Donovan, the attorney, specialized in corporate whistleblower stuff. She listened to the whole thing without interrupting. When I was done, she said, "You're in a really tough spot. But if what you're saying is true, there are laws to protect people like you. She explained, the hard part is proving they fired you because you blew the whistle when they're calling it a restructuring. So I should just give up, I asked. Let them get away with it, she leaned closer. No, I didn't say that. I said it's risky. We need more proof that your firing was directly because of what you found out. Driving home, I saw a black car parked across the street from my building. It was the same car that had been tailing me after I left the lawyer's office. I don't know, maybe it was just my imagination, maybe I was getting freaked out, or it could be that I was onto something way over my head. I just couldn't sleep that night. Everything Curtis had said was swirling around in my head. These people. Who was he so scared of? The people he was working with? Someone at Westbrook. I grabbed my laptop and started really looking into the Harley Group. Turns out they were a private equity firm. They had investments in real estate and also some other markets and industries I'd never even heard of. The CEO was Thomas Harley, a guy who never seemed to be in the news and didn't have any social media stuff. The company website was fancy, but it didn't say much about what they actually owned. Then I found it. A tiny little news blurb from like 3 years ago. Before I even worked at Westbrook, the Harley Group had been getting investigated by the SEC for possible securities fraud. But the case just stopped. No reason given. I kept searching, and I found an old article that mentioned the head SEC investigator had suddenly retired, right in the middle of the investigation. Coincidence? Someone knocked at my door and scared the crap out of me. It was almost midnight. I peeked through the little hole in the door. Jennifer Riley was standing there, looking super stressed. Can I come in? She asked when I opened it. I moved out of the way. She walked in fast, looking around before I shut the door. Were you followed? I asked, kind of joking, but also not. She didn't crack a smile. Maybe, I don't know. She put her bag on my kitchen counter and took out a flash drive. I found more. A lot more. You only just barely started scratching the surface. She plugged the drive into my laptop, and boom, all the files popped up, organized by date, going back half a decade. The Harley stuff isn't the only thing, she said, clicking on some of the documents. There are like 3 other groups of clients doing the same thing. Really big ones, and all of them protected. I asked, protected by who? Jennifer met my gaze flatly. Jonathan Westbrook himself. What, that guy, the big boss, the CEO, the guy whose name is plastered all over the building? How high up does this go? I had to know. The CFO is in on it for sure. Probably the head of client services, too. They've been sneaking money out of the country, using our company to make it all look legit. I just dropped onto the couch. Why are you showing me this? Why not go to the cops or something? She paused, then said, I had to be sure first. I needed another person who knew someone on the outside, just an insurance policy. Insurance against what? I asked. 3 years ago, this analyst named David Weber uncovered something similar. He went straight to the SEC. 2 days later, he was in a car accident. He didn't make it. My throat got tight. You think? I don't know what to think. But his notes mention the Harley Group specifically. I just stared at the screen, watching all these transactions and names swirling around. This was way more than just some small-time rip-off. It was all planned out and done so very carefully, and protected from the very top. What do we do now? I said. Jennifer shut the laptop. We go to someone who can't be bought, someone who's outside of their circle. She took a business card out of her pocket and put it on the table. The FBI. That's who Jennifer, my contact, said she had someone at a specialist in dirty money stuff. But she made it clear, no turning back for either of us. Curtis's words kept echoing in my head, the black car, David Weber, it all felt so real. So when do we meet these people? I asked her. Tomorrow, if you're in, she said. I'm in, I replied. After she left, I made copies of everything on her flash drive and stashed the original behind a loose piece of trim in my bathroom. You know, just in case. That night, I grabbed a bag and slept somewhere else. Some things you just gotta trust your gut about. The FBI office was totally plain, one of those government buildings downtown you wouldn't even notice. Agent Tessa Harding, not like those FBI agents in the movies. No fancy suit, no scary face. Just a woman, maybe in her 40s, wearing comfy shoes and looking really tired. Tell me everything, she said, from the start. So Jennifer and I spent the next 2 hours laying it all out, the fake companies, how the money moved, who got access to what accounts, and the threats we'd gotten. We even talked about how it might tie into an old case. Agent Harding wrote it all down, asking tough questions and calling people to check stuff. When we were done, she leaned back. If you're right, she said, this is huge. Money laundering this big usually means other crimes are involved: drugs, corruption, tax cheats, the whole shebang. Jennifer asked, so you'll look into it? Agent Harding answered, we already are. What you told them matched up with something they'd been working on for ages. She looked right at me, but they needed my statement, officially, maybe even in court someday. Man, I thought about my job prospects after being labeled the guy who ratted out his old boss. Curtis's warning echoed in my head, along with Grandma's voice. I'll do it, I said. Agent Harding gave a little nod. We gotta be careful, she said. These guys have money and friends in high places. She told me to keep mum about our meeting. She gave us each a card with a phone number. If anything weird happens, anything at all, call this number right away, she said. As we walked out, Jennifer put her hand on my arm. You should probably find somewhere else to stay for a bit, she suggested. Just until this blows over. I'd already been at a cheap motel for a couple of nights. Smart, she said with a little smile. You know, when Curtis hired you, he told everyone you were too quiet to cause any trouble. Guess he was wrong. She was right. That afternoon, I had an interview at a smaller company across town. I didn't bring up Westbrook's accusations or the FBI. I just focused on my skills and what I could do for them. The guy seemed really interested and said they'd call me back in 3 days. Just as I was leaving the hotel, my phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't know. Parking garage level 3, blue Honda, 20 minutes. No name. But only one person knew I was staying there, Jennifer. I thought about calling Harding but figured I'd check things out myself first. I was careful, you know, parked a floor up, walked over and stayed close to the stairs. That blue Honda was there, window down. But it wasn't Jennifer driving. It was Trevor, that analyst they'd let go before me. Get in, he said real quick. I kinda stalled. Please, he said, it's about Jennifer, so I hopped in. How'd you find me? I asked. Jennifer told me where you were staying yesterday before they picked her up, he said. My gut just dropped. Picked her up who? Westbrook Security. They're saying she stole some secret stuff, client info. She's talking to their lawyers right now. He messed with his hair. Look, I know what you two found. I saw it too, 6 months ago. That's why I got canned. Why are you here now? I asked him. Because Jennifer helped me out when nobody else would, he said. And because this Westbrook thing, it's way bigger than we ever thought. He tossed me a little USB drive. That's got account info for their offshore money, copies of fake financial reports, and recordings of Westbrook bosses talking to people from the Harley Group. Jennifer managed to grab it before they shut down her computer, he added. I just stared at that tiny thing. Why not go straight to the FBI? I asked. He sighed. Westbrook's got people everywhere, even in the police. Jennifer figured you might know someone we could trust. He looked right at me. You do, right? I remembered Agent Harding and how exhausted she looked the second she saw what we had. Yeah, I told her, I think so. From Trevor's car, I dialed the number on Harding's card and filled her in about Jennifer. In less than an hour, we were at a different FBI office with different agents, making a safe copy of Trevor's stuff. Everything sped up that evening. Jennifer got scooped up by FBI agents as she was leaving Westbrook's office. They said it was for her own safety. They were getting warrants ready, and they were moving me to a safe place until everything blew up. The last person I called was my lawyer, Elaine. They're going in tomorrow, I told her. I need you there with me. I'll be there, she replied. And Matthew, no matter what, you did the right thing. That night, all by myself in some random hotel room the FBI had set me up in, I just thought about how quickly life could change. 3 weeks earlier, I was just doing my job, just an analyst. Now I was right in the middle of what Agent Harding said was one of the biggest financial fraud cases of the year. I didn't feel scared, not anymore. I just felt ready. The raid went down at 9:02 a.m. on a Tuesday. FBI agents went into Westbrook Investment Partners from every possible angle. While they were securing the building, other teams were hitting Jonathan Westbrook, the CFO, and 3 senior partners' homes with search warrants at the same time. They also hit the Harley Group headquarters downtown in Denver. I watched it all from Agent Harding's car across the street. Folks were pouring out of the office, looking totally lost. A bunch of them were getting grilled by feds right there on the sidewalk. Others were just standing around in little clumps, glued to their phones, trying to figure out what the heck was going on. And then I spotted him. Curtis Brandt, being led to a black SUV. No cuffs, but it was clear he wasn't happy about it. His face was all twisted up, like he was really mad or scared. Maybe both. He's cooperating, Agent Harding said, standing right next to me. First one to flip. Figures, trying to make a deal for himself. I almost snorted. Curtis glanced up as the SUV started to pull away. For a split second, our eyes locked through the windows. He didn't seem shocked to see me, just beaten. By the afternoon, the news was everywhere. Big investment firm busted in a fraud investigation. The reports mentioned a whistleblower who blew the whole thing wide open. My name wasn't out there yet, but I knew it wouldn't be long. Jennifer called me from her lawyer's office. They're giving immunity to the little guys who cooperate, she told me. But the big shots aren't so lucky. Jonathan Westbrook got hauled away from his house. They found shredded papers in his fireplace. What about the Harley Group, Thomas Harley? Nowhere to be found. Apparently, he skipped town last week, but they froze the company's money. 2 days later, I was sitting in a federal prosecutor's office, going over my testimony one more time. The proof was just overwhelming. We had everything Trevor and Jennifer's saved stuff, all my original research, the banking records they grabbed during the raid, and then statements from like 6 Westbrook employees. They'd seen bits and pieces of the whole mess, but they were too scared to talk before. The prosecutor, Diane Lawrence, she was a no-nonsense type, shut her folder. "Mr. Shaw, your story is super important to this case," she said. "But I need you to know what you're getting yourself into. The defense lawyers are gonna try to make you look bad. They'll say you're angry, bad at your job, or just out for revenge. It's not gonna be fun. Do you understand? Are you ready for that?" I thought about Curtis's warning about Jennifer getting nabbed by Westbrook Security, and David Weber. He could have been gotten rid of for good. "Yes," I said, "I'm ready." A week later, the first charges came down. Jonathan Westbrook, the CFO, and 2 of the big partners were indicted on all sorts of counts: fraud, washing money, conspiracy. Curtis got charged too, but with lighter charges since he was helping out. The day the indictments were announced, I got a job offer from that firm I'd interviewed with. Word of my part in the case had spread around the industry. They offered me a good raise, and there was a note from the CEO. "We need more people like you, people with integrity." I took the job. Everything finally clicked into place. About a month later, I got a letter from the SEC's whistleblower program. Getting a piece of the penalties Westbrook had to pay 15% because my tip-off helped nail them was a game changer. The money they were talking about? Whoa, I mean seriously, I wouldn't have to stress about bills for ages. That night, I went to Grandma's grave and put some fresh flowers down. "You were right," I whispered. "Trust your gut." I could almost hear her chuckle. Half a year later, I was at a coffee shop downtown, buried in reports for my new job, when my phone blew up with a news alert. Jonathan Westbrook, the old Westbrook CEO, had copped a plea in that fraud case. 7 to 10 years he was looking at, and his whole company gone. Poof. Competitors snapped up whatever was left, and the name Westbrook was basically mud. I dismissed the alert and got back to work. The whole thing had dropped off the news cycle, replaced by some other mess, but it left its mark. New rules, company-wide checks, and they even talk about it in business school now. Curtis got off pretty easy probation and a suspended sentence because he helped out. Last I heard, he was slinging insurance in Nebraska for his brother-in-law. He even tried to email me once, something about hoping I understood. I didn't even finish reading it, so I landed on my feet, snagged a job with a compliance firm. They really appreciated what I brought to the table. I'd see Trevor now and then for coffee. We had that thing in common, but we weren't exactly best buds. He'd bolted to Seattle, a whole new life in tech, nothing to do with the old finance world or me. Things were good for me, honestly. My new job was tough, but in a good way. My boss loved how detail-oriented I was, how I wouldn't let anything slide. That whistleblower money, mostly still sitting there, untouched, in an investment account. I did use some to buy a little house outside the city, a place with a garden my grandma would have adored. I still glanced in my rearview mirror way more than I should, still kept extra digital copies of everything important, and still trusted what I saw happening more than I trusted people's promises. But I slept better, I really did. I was paying for my coffee, getting ready to leave work, when this young guy came up to my table. Early 20s, all jittery, clutching this portfolio. He mumbled something like, "Excuse me, are you Matthew Shaw?" I gave him a cautious nod. He said, "I'm Jason, just started at Meridian Financial. They said I should talk to you about their compliance stuff, that you're the expert on why it all matters." I sized him up for a sec. He was so eager, so earnest, just like I used to be. "Grab a seat," I said, pointing to the chair. "Let me tell you a story about patterns and why they're so darn important." He sat, flipped open his notebook, pen poised. And I started at the very beginning. I learned this lesson the hard way, honestly. It's like there were times I felt so helpless, like my voice didn't matter at all. I really wanted to scream and shout and be heard. But then there were other moments when I realized the real strength came from something different. It was about choosing to stay present, choosing not to shut down, not to pretend I didn't see what was happening. When everyone else wanted to turn their heads or pretend it wasn't their problem, I forced myself to keep looking. It felt awkward, definitely uncomfortable at times. You'd think it was all about being loud, but it wasn't. It was about bearing witness, just being there, even if it meant nothing. It's funny because it wasn't always about doing something big or heroic. Sometimes, it was just that quiet, stubborn refusal to give in to the feeling of this isn't my fight. It was a struggle, but also it started to make a difference.